This video is to review test number 1. So let's take a look at the instructions for test number 1. The first thing that we're going to do is select an architectural template. So to select the architectural template, in the home screen of Revit, you can click on Architectural Template. Second step is to save the project file. So we're going to do File, Save As, Project. Remember, we're always saving a project when we're working on a model. And we're going to insert Test 1, Part 2, last name. And you're also going to change the options here so that you have 5 backup copies. So you'll say OK, change the file name, and then hit Save. The next thing that we're going to do is it says to draw a 40 by 40 square using 6-inch generic walls. So what I want you to notice, and please pay very careful attention to this in the future when completing all your practice exercises and the tests. This figure in the book shows you that I have a 40 by 40 square that's dimensioned to the exterior face of the square. It's not dimensioned to the center line. It's not dimensioned to the interior face. It's to the exterior face. If you have trouble seeing this, you can zoom in on your Word document so that it becomes clearer where the dimension extension lines of that dimension are touching. I expect that when you create a model, that it matches the model from the book or from the test. That is always part of the assignment, is that your ability to follow the instructions and pick up on those small details. So small details are super important in the field of architecture and construction. You really need to pay very careful attention to things. So let's go through and look at how to do this. To draw a 40 by 40 square that's to the exterior face, we're going to select Wall. We're going to select a generic 6-inch wall. Make sure that you don't pick masonry. That's not what was asked for. Generic 6-inch was asked for. And you're going to change the location wall to Finish Face Exterior. By doing this, it sets the exterior face of the walls where the dimension is going to start. So I'm going to move my mouse over and type 40 feet. Move it down and type 40 feet. Move it back over, and then close the loop. Now when you draw, remember that your building should always be in the center between all of the elevation markers. If you don't put it in the center, your elevations will not show up correctly down here in your project browser. So you always need to draw between these elevation markers. Now I have a 40 by 40 square. I'm going to dimension this square. I'm going to use Align Dimensions, and I'm going to select the wall face as my start point, and then I'm going to end at the wall face. There's 40 feet by 40 feet. If your dimensions look too big, for example, maybe they're 1/8 of an inch, you can always change them back to 3/32 of an inch. If they still look too big, you can change your scale down here, and if you adjust this scale, it would also adjust the size of your dimensions. But I'm going to put mine back to 1/8 because they look pretty good there. Alright, so let's move on to the next step. The next step is to offset the top wall and the left wall by 15 feet. So I'm going to click on this wall. I'm going to use the Offset tool, and then I'm going to type in 15 feet. And I'm going to point my mouse downward. And then I'm going to go over here and do, oh, doesn't want to do it yet, so let's try it again. Offset 15 feet, and then this way. And then you have to trim these two walls. So to trim, you're going to click on the wall. I like to use the corner trim in this case. And you click on all the parts of the walls you want to keep. So I want to keep this part of the wall, and I want to keep this part of the wall, and then it removes those other two pieces. Now again, I'm going to dimension the 15-foot square. And make sure that you're looking back at the assignment instructions, and what you're going to notice, is I'm going to zoom way in so you can see it, is that my 15 foot starts from the face of the wall, goes to the face of the wall to the face of the wall. So make sure that your dimensions are also the same. So let's go ahead and do that. Annotate, align, select wall face, pick the face of the wall and the face of the wall. That's 15 feet. And the face, and that's the other 15-foot dimension. The next step is to draw a vertical wall from the midpoint of the 15-foot So I'm going to go back to architecture, wall. I'm going to come over, and I'm actually going to use this wall here because this will be the true midpoint of the wall, the 15 feet. I find that midpoint location. I'm going to draw the wall straight up. And then I'm going to annotate, and again, make sure that you're looking at the image 7'3" from the face of the wall to the center line of the wall to the face of the wall. Okay, and that ability to look at those images and pick up on those things is very important. I'm going to change this to wall center lines while I'm dimensioning so I can get the center of the wall, and then change it back to wall face. Okay, so when I place my 15-foot wall, I think something weird kind of happened, but that's good because now I can show you how to fix it. This is supposed to be 7'3", and this dimension is supposed to be 7'3". To adjust dimensions in Revit, you cannot fudge it. You actually have to move the walls. So I need to move this wall over to the left in order to get this dimension to 7'3". Once I click on this wall, you'll notice that this dimension turns blue, which means that I can now edit it. I'm going to then click in this box, and I'm going to type 7 foot 3 inches and then hit enter, and it will move whatever wall is selected over. Now, if all of these sound like new concepts to you, please go back and watch the videos that I created for Module 1 and 2 as they discuss all of these topics, and also make sure that you're reading your textbook carefully. Alright, our next step is to add a door. So we're going to go back to the Architecture tab, click Door, and we're going to place a door right here in this wall. And then we're going to answer some questions. So question number 1 says, what's different about the two files, your backup file, the file name .002, and the file name test1_part2? And the difference is that the first file, named .002, when you open it, it probably shows that it's blank. And that depends on when the file saved itself. So the backup files, .001, 002, 003, 004, and 005 are saving at increments. And you can go back in your file if you make a mistake, and you can open one of those files to where before you made the mistake, or you can open one of those files if something gets corrupted. The files that are the backup files are always the files named .00 whatever. And then which file is the most recent version? That would be the file that's named this, test1_part2_ last name, without any of the .002s, 003, 004s, or 005s. This one's always the most recent version and the version that you should be opening, especially when you're working on a project, which we're going to do later. Alright, so those are the instructions for how to complete part 1 of the test. The next video, I will show you how to complete, or excuse me, part 2 of the test. I'll show you how to complete part 3 of the test. This video is to explain part 3. So for part 3, we're using detail lines, offset, and trim tool to create a sofa. We're going to go to the architectural template, and then we're going to go to the annotate tool, and we're going to select detail lines. Now, some of you selected model lines, which is incorrect. Model lines show up in green, and with model lines, you actually won't see them when you print in Revit. So you need to make sure that you're using detail lines, and detail lines were covered in your textbook as well as some of the videos I created. So again, please don't rush through your homework. Please take the time to carefully read everything that is put on Blackboard for you, as it is done with great thought and care to ensure that you understand how to use this program. So detail line, and we're going to draw I'm going to start by drawing a rectangle, and I'm going to go over 6 foot 2 inches. Let's see. Well, I'm going to get as close as possible, and actually I like that I did it a little weird because this is going to help me. I'm going to move it into the center, and I'm going to zoom in. Okay, so I have a rectangle. I'm going to dimension it. And I like that these dimensions are actually wrong because it's going to help me show you how to adjust these, which you should know, but just in case. So my overall rectangle is supposed to be 6 foot 2. So again, I need to move some of the objects in this rectangle so that this becomes 6'2". I'm going to move this wall, or this line on the right. I'm going to click on it, and when I do, the temporary dimension pops up. In that temporary dimension box, I'm going to type 6'2" and hit enter, and it will move whatever line or object is selected over. This right here is supposed to be 2'3", so I'm going to move this line. I'm going to click on it, makes this dimension temporary, and I'll type 2'3" and hit enter. So now I have the outline of my sofa. The next thing I'm going to do is I have to draw another rectangle inside that's 5'6". So I'm going to think to myself, what is 6'2" minus 5'6"? The answer is 8 inches. So if I know the difference between 6'2" and 5'6" is 8 inches, then I'm going to infer that there's going to be 4 inches on this side and 4 inches on that side. And since all the dimensions around my sofa look the same, I'm going to say this is also going to be 4 inches. So let's go ahead and give that a try. I'm going to offset some lines. So I'm going to click on this line and use the offset tool, type in 4 inches, and I'm going to offset this 4 inches, the top part, and the side. The next thing I need to do is trim. So to trim, I like to use again this corner tool. It's going to trim the corners, and I'm going to click on the objects I want to keep. So I want to keep this wall, and I want to keep this wall, and then it takes away the little piece I don't want. Trim over here, I want to keep this wall, and I want to keep this wall, and it will trim again that little piece I don't want. If you're struggling with the trim, please continue to practice this, as it's a very helpful tool in Revit, and you definitely want to make sure you know how to use it. Okay, so now my sofa isn't quite right, because if you look at the image, it shows that it extends 3 inches past like this exterior piece here. So what I'm going to do is I am going to offset this 3 inches. So I'm going to do offset 3 inches and select that, and then I'm going to extend this wall or this line to meet this line. So I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to use the extend tool. To use the extend, I'm going to click where I want the object to go, and then the object I want to move. And then I'm going to trim the corner. So I'm going to click on I want to keep this object, and I want to keep this object. I'm going to do it over here. I'm actually going to try to use the trim extend corner this time, and I'm going to click this object, and then it puts them together. Now I need to just trim out this line in between. So to do that, I'm going to use the split element. I'm going to slice this line in the middle, or wherever, it doesn't really matter. So now it becomes 2 separate pieces. Now I can use my trim tool. I'm going to select the object where I want the trim to stop, and then the object that I want to keep. Where I want the trim to stop, the object I want to keep. And then I'm going to annotate this 3 inches right here. And if you notice that they overlap, what I'll do is I'm just going to pull that 3 inches out so that I can read it. But I am going to make sure that my dimensions are aligned so it looks proper. And then the last dimension I'm going to provide is the 5'6" dimension. And now my image looks like the image that's in the book, or in the instructions, excuse me. So you'll save this as well and then submit it.